Hi, I'm Gaz. Hi, I'm Gazanirdak, and it turns out that some of these dungeons are maybe a little bit more difficult than I originally thought. But before I got into this mess, I was busy taking lives and taking femurs. I then met up with my friend, squirting, who offered me a trade and gave me this war axe that he had found, which I gladly accepted. And then I equipped my new weapon. And after that, we carried on the quest for this hunter dwarf dude, who I found hanging upside down in this house. But before I could free him, I was confronted by Headhunter Joe, who I smacked into oblivion. And then I freed the dwarf hunter dude, who offered me this war axe, which is actually better than the one that my friend, squirting, just gave me. So I mean, sure, I'll take it. Completely discarding my friend's gift, I decided to head on out to continue with my quests. And then we ran into these two battling dinosaurs again, but with my new weapon, I was sure I could take them. So I smacked down the T-Rex, and then I smacked down the Triceratops, and collected another huge femur. I returned and finished my quest, and then flew back to the city, where I returned to this place to use this rat machine. So I dragged this item into the box, and please don't tell Squirting, but I also put his gift in the box, and then I began to scrap it down into components, and it actually gave me a lot. And after that, it was once again time to head out. I thought that after all this ore I've collected, I could make something. Turns out I can make this thing, but I'd need this luminous flux. Now luckily for me, the guy just behind me sold some. So I hammered away and made a relic of the past, which I have no idea what it does. And then I went to the mining shop and bought this mining sack. And then spent probably too much time trying to figure out how to equip it. But like most things so far, it was actually very obvious and I managed to figure it out. I then carried on with my mission and made my way down this hill. Not learning from my past mistakes, I resurrected, and then decided it was time to queue up for yet another dungeon. And after no time, I got the option to enter. And once I loaded in, I was put into this weird Zandalari temple looking place. We marched on forward into the dungeon, but it turns out they were more difficult than they looked. But old Gaza never gives up, so we went back and died again. And then one of our group members left, and then another one left, and then I left. Carrying on with my mission, I found myself entering a familiar place, where I was met again by Bramblewing, but this time I left them alone. I then continued with my quest until I collected all the eggs that I needed. And then I also had to collect some flesh from these dudes. I returned back to the Beast Lord, and handed in my quests, which leveled me up to level 23. And then I had to use this growth hormone on the dinosaur, so I injected this beefy boy with the steroids, and he grew. And then completely changed. I then applied another skill on the skill tree. And then it was time to train my dinosaur. I then found myself placed on top of its back. And then I was met with this T-Rex called Pinky. And then all of a sudden, it was trying to kill me. I went for the gate, and I pressed the boost key, and it ran backwards. I don't know what the hell was going on, if I'm being honest. But luckily, I managed to get on track. My Triceratops was running as fast as his little stubby legs could take him, but I managed to distract Pinky with a toy. I then had to break through these gates, until I finally made my way to safety. But it turns out Pinky was a little bit out of control, so I had to teach this prehistoric prick a lesson, and after facing the strength of the Gaz, he ran away in fear. I then returned once again to the Beast Lord and accepted these Rastari leg plates. And then I had to put the Triceratops in this pen. And it looks like for now, that was the last I had to do with my dinosaur buddy. I then set off to find a quest to continue with the storyline. I talked to the king, but he didn't really have anything for me. I was exploring around a little bit when I got an option to enter another dungeon. And this time I found myself in some kind of haunted house manor thing. But nevertheless, we started smacking away at the monsters. And then we found the first set of bosses, which were these sisters or something. And then I turned into a big Gaza and started smacking away, but I think I was being controlled. But nevertheless, we smacked them down, and I was rewarded a new belt. So we moved on until we found the soulbound Goliath. And like the ferocious warrior that Gaz is, he charged straight in, and then charged straight out. And now that the tank was actually taking the damage instead of me, we started to defeat this monster, which we took down no problem, and I was rewarded with some gold. So like always, I ran ahead, where I discovered these maggot things, which actually do a lot of damage. I tried running away, my teammate kind of just stood there, but it was no use, and I died. I ran back and then I entered this room, where we found the next boss, who was this big, fat, pig looking dude, but we took him down, no problem. And I was rewarded with Ral's bib, We then made our way down these stairs, and I opened my map. And then I fell down the stairs or something, and just started getting smacked. After my teammate saved me, we were next faced by this Lord and Lady Waycrest, and we initiated the battle. And then the Lady Waycrest decided to come fight as well. But it didn't matter, because we smacked them down as well. And I got more gold. I carried on and found the final boss. And once again, I charged in first. And this boss had this mechanic where you had to light these minions on fire or something. So yeah, that's cool. And like clockwork, like a well-oiled machine, we completed the dungeon, no problem. And I was rewarded with more gold. But I also reached level 24, and then I left the dungeon. When I got back, I talked to War Druid Lottie and completed her quests. I then had to kill these corrupted guardians, so I got to work. And put them all down, one by one. I returned to Lottie and completed that quest also. I ran up these stairs and encountered Big Man Dragada, so I charged in once again and initiated the battle. But like most monsters so far, they were no match for the Gaz. And then he got flamed by Lottie. I returned to Lottie and completed the quest and got level 25. And then I was given a quest to choose a lower. I had the choice between this bird dude or this dinosaur dude. I ended up choosing the bird dude. I then jumped on the back of this dinosaur and we headed out across the forest, where I was dropped in this kind of tree looking area. But then I noticed a star on the map. But before I headed to the star, I had to go AFK, so I parked myself safely behind this fence. I then returned to my computer, dead, and only found out how I died after I watched the recording back. I then ran to this Kandak's lair and found the star monster that I was looking for. It was also no match for Gaz, which gave me this new cloak, which is just slightly better than the one that I just got from the dungeon. I then carried on back up the mountain, where I encountered this big looking bird dinosaur called Paku. So I talked to the bird, and it told me that they required a leap of faith. And the quest list said it a bit more bluntly, which basically meant she wanted me to jump off of a cliff. And this cliff was very high up. And I'm no stranger of jumping to my death, so I did it. But for the first time, I didn't die. And then it seems I was accepted by Paku. And after that interesting experience, I was flown back to the city, where I completed my quest, and then returned to the king, who had a quest for me. But before I did the quest, I needed to settle a curiosity, which was to wonder where the hell these portals went. And at the time, I didn't notice that it said the name here, so I just randomly took this portal, not knowing where it was going to take me. I ended up in a completely new area, and after spamming my keys to find the map, it turns out I was in Silvermoon, which is in the Eastern Kingdoms. Feeling a little bit overwhelmed, I headed back to Atal'Dazar, but somehow ended up in Orgrimmar. I talked to the portal supervisor, but they couldn't tell me anything. But then I recognized the picture in this portal and knew this was the right one. Confused, I managed to get back to Zandalar, and then I stood on this light thing. And then I finally began the quest, which wanted me to go down to the southwestern side of the map. So I met up with Zalani and started another quest.
Slow down, hold up, let me pick the phone up. Pussy boy, shut up. Fa la 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 la. Fill my teacup, my girl bossed up. Yeah, she kinda stuck up. Fa la la la. Your lady thirsty, no show mercy. She too curvy, controversial. Suck my D, Kira skirt. She some mash, yeah, Eddie Murphy.
Okay, that's the end of the montage. So I activated this final obelisk thing and headed in my quests, which ended up getting me to level 26. And now I had to fight this cow guy. So I found him on this boat and started smacking him. And I really like when I fight monsters that have like unique mechanics, like these tornado lightning things. It was actually really cool, I really like it. But once again, it was no match. And then my friend Squirting wanted to show off how he could breathe underwater. And then he cast this spell on me that lets me breathe for 10 minutes. So while I was here, I found some monolite, and then killed this weird dinosaur looking thing, and then I jumped on this bird, ready to return, but I was put into a cutscene, which involved the king returning to his throne and finding his friends dead or something, and then he was shanked in the back by this rat, Zul the Prophet. And then he mentioned something about Gahoon, whatever that is, and then the king was picked up by this bird and carried off. But anyway, I returned to the Great Seal and handed in my quest, and I could choose between some pauldrons or a helmet. And after some thought, I chose to go with the helmet. And then I found this dude who trained me in the ways of archaeology. A lot of archaeology. And then I made my way to another quest marker on the map. And then I found this weird bird thing which turned me into this ghost flying dinosaur thing, and it flew me to the top of the temple. Noting that down, I used it to get back. And then I talked to this dude who also had some quests for me. So I killed some Hex Mother, killed some Inquisitors, and completed the quests. And then I was invited to a guild, so I was like, why not? Sure. I carried on killing these spider things and completed yet another quest, which leveled me up to level 27. And then I found myself once again in the ability tree, where I was actually having like a good read over everything, trying to decide which path I wanted to take, but in the end, I chose this one. I made my way to the top of the stairs and found the spider thing which someone was already fighting, which just made it easier to smack down. I then cut down Hexlord Raoul from this web, and then we flew over to this garden place, where I was offered a quest to rescue Gonk. And then I also had to rescue Paku, the bird, so I ran to help Gonk, but found this trail of corpses, and it seems like Gonk had already rescued himself. But anyway, I completed the quest, and then I found Paku, who was bound by these mages. So once again, I got to work, smacking down these Shadra betrayer dudes, until we finally rescued Paku. And then I had to go find this dude called Volkal, and then I walked down these stairs, and I'm not really sure what the hell I walked in on, but they were doing something to this big spider. But anyway, I smacked down Volkal, and then the woman turned into a spider. And then she just stunned me and kinda walked off, so sure. Not really knowing what the hell just happened, I returned to Lottie, and then I made my way through this temple thing to try to get to my next quest. And like always, I managed to attract the whole gang. Why am I so shit at this game? So I released Spirit just to get flamed once again. I returned and resurrected. I then made my way to this camp thing. First things first, I unlocked the Flight Master. And then I accepted another quest from Zelani. I walked into this house and found the king, who looked just a bit dead. But this turtle dude was sure he could help. He just needed me to gather various ingredients. So I got to work, scraping this dinosaur. When all of a sudden, I was hit by another option to join a dungeon. So of course I entered. I then found myself in this dreary swamp looking place. It looks like our first boss was this Sand Queen beetle thing. And like always, I charged in first. And I honestly have no idea how I didn't die during this fight, but it was close. But in the end, like always, we managed to smack down the Sand Queen, and I took my leg segments. We then all grouped up and made our way into the drain. And I was ready as ever to start the next fight, and I almost died instantly. Since this was my first time in this dungeon, I didn't understand the mechanics of any of the bosses, and I died. But thankfully we had two teammates who had some idea of what to do, and they managed to kill it on their own. And I was rewarded with a turncoat's cape. Carrying on, I found this cannon thing that I jumped into, and I was pressing the 1 key, but it wasn't shooting, so I don't know. And then we had to kick one of our teammates because they disconnected. And then another one left. And then a little later, another one disconnected. And then I had to leave too. So I got back to my mission, collecting traitor's blood, freeing these villagers from something, and then I had to kill this lower speaker Kihara. I then made my way towards this boat because I saw a star on it, and then tried to figure out how to get on the boat, but after swimming around the whole thing, I had no idea. So for the moment, I gave up. I made my way back to the house to hand in all these quests, where I was rewarded with mountains of gold and XP. And then I had to help the turtle dude with his ritual by collecting and bringing him all the ingredients. And then the king still looked dead as hell. And then apparently I had to go retrieve the king's soul, so I went to this altar and placed down this idol, which summoned this big T-Rex dude. But once again, I got distracted by a star on the map. So I went and smacked this big crab looking thing, which actually gave me a good belt. And then my friend Squirting said he saw something in the water, so I followed him down into the depths, where we found this like turtle village under the water. It was actually pretty cool because it wasn't even marked. But then I decided I should probably go back, and got the soul back from this ghost dude. I then restored the spirit back into the king, and then he finally looked less dead. And then he wanted me to go to that boat that I saw before. And then I saw this person and thought maybe they could take me to the boat. So I jumped on board. We made our way to the boat, and then went right past the boat. And when I finally reached my destination, it turns out I had actually gone very far away. So I got off the boat, and then I saw this turtle dude, so I ran over to him, accepted a quest, and then just left straight away, and went back past the ship. Not anywhere close to my goal, I got off. And then I went to go help my friend Squirting do the quest that I just did before. He was having trouble finding the things that the turtle needed, so I stood on all the places that he needed to go. And afterwards, we made our way together to the boat. And this time, I found these ropes that I can climb up to get on the boat, which I don't know if they were there the whole time, but yeah. And then I killed this chosen dude, and he dropped these Gotaka's Wallopers, which is my first ever set item that I've seen. So I finished up what I had to do on the boat, and returned to the king. And then I had to go meet the king outside this temple place. So I accepted his quest, and ran in. So I made my way into the temple, and my mission was to cleanse these statues by destroying these totem things. And while I was here, I also completed the bonus objective. Then I made my way to the marker to hand in my quest, but there was no one here. And then I was looking around the whole area trying to find where the hell I was meant to go to turn in my quest, because the marker was right there. And then I decided to look down, and it said that my marker was 88 yards below me. I was very confused. And then my friend Squirting said that they were here, so I ran over, and there was still nothing here at all. But he could see them, so I logged out and logged back in. and there was still nothing. So I decided to run back to where I started the quest, and it looks like I had actually missed a quest just here. So I quickly completed this quest, and when I next returned, here they were. So I handed in my quest and reached level 30, and I also unlocked expert riding. I then had to kill these two dudes, and then I had to free the big dinosaur dude from before. So I smacked down the dude who was binding him in place, and the king freed the T-Rex. So I completed that quest and moved on. And then my friend Squirting found this cave that had a star monster in it. So we went in and smacked down this raptor thing. But as we were leaving the cave, we saw this big dinosaur bird thing, and it seemed someone was fighting it. As we were running over to see if we could help, we were suddenly picked up by these bird things. And then we were just like dropped and almost died. So Squirting and I decided to make a run for it. And I don't think the other guy was so lucky. Later on in our travels, we found this dagger jaw fish thing. So we decided just to dive in onto it. And after an awkward battle in the water and spamming my buttons, we killed it. Then I made my way to this waterfall, which was blocking my path. So I opened my map to try to figure out a safe route down the waterfall. But it seems like my friend Squirting had other ideas. Moving along the waterfall, I accidentally slipped down these rocks into this kind of hole thing, and I didn't know what the hell to do. I couldn't get out, so I was moving around, trying to do everything, trying to summon my raptor, but nothing seemed to work. I was completely stuck. But luckily I remembered I had this hearthstone, so I decided to use it and return to this inn. And then I returned to the Great Seal, where I began to ask the guards where I could find a riding trainer, but it turns out there aren't any in Atal'Dazar, so I decided to head to the one place I knew that did have a riding trainer. And once again, not noticing the portal names, I made my way through this portal, which took me to Silvermoon once again, and then I turned around and went to Orgrimmar. And I once again found myself roaming the streets of Orgrimmar, where I ran over to this tree and started yoinking presents. And then I spoke to the Santa Orc dude who wanted milk and cookies. But anyway, I continued to yoink these presents, which gave me a whole random assortment of items. I don't even know what half of this stuff even does. But it turns out that one of them turns my dinosaur into a reindeer. Carrying on, I found the riding trainer, and I trained myself in journeyman riding. I then went over to this fisherman orc and accepted the fish quest. I opened my map and saw this other quest called I Believe You Can Fly. So I reindeered my way over there and found my way up. Eventually. I found this person called Mazda who was a flying trainer. And honestly, I was starting to get excited, so I ran over and talked to this orc dude who gave me the option to buy one of these wind riders. So in the end, I decided to go with the purple one, which I accidentally sold back to the store instantly. So after buying it again, I made sure that I actually closed the shop and then I used it. So I summoned my new lion looking thing and tried to fly, but it didn't work. So I went to the flying trainer once again and learned expert riding, and now I should be able to fly. So I did a little run up and boosted off on my reindeer, and honestly, this has to be the coolest part of the game for me so far. So there I was, boosting around Orgrimmar on the back of this reindeer. So I reindeered my way over to this fish quest, collected this fish, and then reindeered my way back to finish the fish quest. I then used the Hearthstone to return back to Zandalar. So I summoned my new flying mount and took off. At least I thought I was going to take off, but I did not take off. I fell down the waterfall. Awkwardly swimming to land, it turns out it is not possible to fly in Zandalar. Noting that down, I met up with the king, who started to give this big speech about saving Zandalar. And then he shouted, "For Zandalar!" and we boosted off. It seemed that the war had begun, so we started killing these disciples and reading these prophecies. And then I found myself jumping on the back of this bird. We started throwing down airstrikes on these Zul's forces. And then we came to this barricaded gate, which didn't seem to be any problem for this magic T-Rex dude. And then the king, T-Rex, and I headed it, where I started fighting all these big berserk dudes, which can be pretty difficult to kill when there's 3 of them. I then went over to speak to the king and asked him what to do now. And then we entered a cutscene, which involved the T-Rex walking over to this place and falling into some kind of blood trap or something. And then he turned into this skeleton T-Rex thing. And then he yelled at us, so we ran away. And then I had this quest to kill Yasma, and I swear I was in the exact same places on the map, but I couldn't find it anywhere. So I gave up and just decided to leave. I didn't even realize that I'd actually left. So I kept trying to leave, and it turns out I was already outside. So once again, I used the Hearthstone back to the inn, where I met up once again with Princess Talanji and completed my quest. And then I opened this map on the table, and it seems like this would let me choose a new zone to start. But before I did that, there were some other quests that I wanted to finish. So I met up with this Captain Grezko, and we were going to head to some island. So we jumped on the back of his bird, and we took off down to the south side of the map. So I arrived at the island, and ran over to start my quest, which basically I just had to free this crew. So I ran on over to the ship and started smacking. I then found the crew and freed them from their cell, while continuing to beat up these Zulian crewmen. I thought my job was finished here, but as I was leaving, I saw this chest on the map. So I went down to the depths of the ship, where I ended up finding the entire crew. So I went back and finished them off, and then I claimed my treasure. I then had to kill this dude and light this tower, which I once again had no idea how to do. And I don't know how I keep doing this, because it is honestly very, 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 very obvious. But eventually I figured it out, and I pressed this button. I then continued on, doing more fighting and more dying. I finally killed this boss man on the ship, and it seems like all the quests in this area were done. So I once again started heading back to the Great Seal, but then I started looking through my quests a little bit more, and it turns out this one is a dungeon. So I opened up my dungeon finder, and it turns out that I actually have to choose this specific dungeon right here. But before I did that, my friend Squirting wanted to show me how to do archaeology, which was pretty straightforward. You just had to like follow these telescopes or whatever and then dig up the things, and it's actually pretty simple. And then I decided to start my queue for the dungeon, and I found these fragments from the archaeology I just did. But while I was waiting for the dungeon, I decided to kill some time, and by that I meant I was killing these rats that came from the water, which in turn helped these turtle dudes, which all had like the exact same voice lines. I then clouded to the Great Seal, and once again took my awkward portal path to Orgrimmar. For no other reason than I just wanted to fly around again, because honestly, this is probably the coolest part of the game for me. And I also was testing what could kill me and what couldn't. And good thing this big fire thing didn't kill me, honestly. Then made my way to this rat bank. I started storing all those Christmas items I got that I don't think I need. And then I found myself back in this portal room. And for some reason, I decided to go through this portal and ended up in this place called Warspear, which turned out to be on a completely different planet. So I spent some time looking through the map and then started exploring through Warspear, trying to see what there was to do here. When I found this auction house place, which I hadn't actually used before, for the first time I opened up this auction house, which had all these weapons and armor and things, but I didn't actually know how to search it, because whenever I clicked on anything, it was just blank. So I actually had no idea what to do. It turns out I just had to press search. So I started looking through these weapons when I went to the sword section. I found this blue one called this Guardian Blade, and it was only 5 gold, so I thought why not, and I bought it. And then I started going through looking where to actually claim it. I ended up finding out about these WoW token things, which give you game time, which is pretty cool. And then I found this section called containers and bags. And it turns out you can buy all these different kinds of bags. So I decided to search by slot size, where I found this bag called a Wildercloth bag, which had 32 slots, and I could actually afford it. So I decided to buy this item too. And then I started the search again to try find out how to actually claim the items that I just bought, because honestly, I had no idea. I couldn't seem to figure out how to claim items at all. But then I had an idea, so I went back to Orgrimmar. So I went to the auction house in Orgrimmar because I thought since this is a noob area, I thought they would explain how to use the auction house. Before I could even try, I finally found a dungeon. So I entered the dungeon and didn't even realize I'd actually been here earlier. Turns out our first boss to face was the T-Rex. So I headed on down to start the battle, which didn't go well. So I kept trying, and then I saw in the chat someone asked how to get more bags. We all eventually died once again to the dinosaur, and then I saw the response where the guy said to buy them from the auction house. So I took this opportunity to ask how to actually collect the items from the auction house, to which I actually got my first response, and they told me to check my mailbox. But anyway, I carried on fighting, and dying, and fighting, and dying, and dying even more. Till eventually, I was kicked from the group and put back in the auction house, being greeted by some rat. But this was okay because I knew exactly what I had to do. So I went outside and checked the mailbox and found all the items I had just bought. So I claimed my sword and I claimed my bag. And without problems this time, I actually managed to equip the bag, which ended up giving me so much more inventory space. And then I equipped my brand new sword, the Guardian Blade. Some time had passed since then, and I was looking for some more quests, when I finally got the option to enter the dungeon. So I once again found myself in this dungeon. With my new weapon and new bag, I knew this time was going to be different. And once again we ran over to this dinosaur who charged towards us, and this time was no different. Except this time I watched my teammates and learned that when the T-Rex does this terrifying visage, my teammate would run behind this pillar, which seemed to work. So when we eventually all died, I ran back and took my position behind this pillar. We then started the fight with the T-Rex once again. But when it used the terrifying visage, I used my newfound knowledge and hid behind the pillar, and I didn't die. So the process remained the same. Each time it terrified, I ran behind this pillar, and it seemed to work. So I did it again and again, slowly chipping away at the dinosaur's health. And I was pretty happy to at least feel like I'm learning and not be the complete noob in the dungeon. I felt like I was actually helping my team, and we managed to kill this damn dinosaur, which gave me this ring called the Seal of the Regal Lower. We then moved on to the next boss, where I had to kill these totem things, and it was difficult, but not as difficult as the last boss. But I think this was maybe because we had a really good healer on the team that stopped me from dying every 2 seconds. But in the end, we managed to kill this guy first time. And then we moved on to the next boss, who was this priestess person. And then unfortunately our tank died, but without losing hope, we kept going on. And then it turns out that I was designated to be the new tank of the group, which in my opinion was not a very good idea. But I think it bought just enough time for the team to manage to finish it off. So I quickly ran back to the body and grabbed these new leg plates. And then we finally made it to the final boss where my team was waiting for me. Feeling a bit more confident this dungeon, I ran in. But then one of our teammates died and left. But after that, we grouped up with our new teammate and decided to take it on once again. So once again, Gaza went in swinging his sword. Each time we were getting closer and closer, but it just wasn't quite enough. And then my team was so kind to give me a rundown of the mechanics. Apparently I have to kill these souls. So the next time the soul spell was cast, I aimed straight onto the soul and started swinging my sword. And once again, we got so close, but unfortunately, I was the last one alive and couldn't quite do it. So we went back at it once again, and following my team's advice, I kept targeting the souls as soon as they appeared. And this time, we actually managed to do it. The team and I managed to kill this stupid, soul-sucking spider, and I was given the amazing reward of more gold. But anyway, after all was said and done, I said thank you to my group, and then teleported out of the dungeon, to where I instantly returned back to the Great Seal. I met up once again with Princess Talanji, and finished my quest, getting my biggest XP drop yet, and reaching level 33. I then once again opened this map on the table, which I decided that my journey would next take me to this place in the north called Nazmir. So Gaz once again jumped on his bird, and went off to wherever his journey would take him.